And so, like many years in the past, I am behind on my Goodreads goal, and we are very close to the end of the year. So in this video, I'm going to try to get back on track. So as you can see, I'm currently 7 books behind on my Goodreads goal. So in this video, I'm going to try to read 7 books in 7 days. And of course, to try to get back on track, all of the books that I'm going to be reading in this vlog are fairly short because I'm not that quick of a reader. And trying to do full-length novels would just be unrealistic of me. So stick around if you are interested in some short book recommendations, or if you're just interested to see me try to accomplish my goal. Okay, so it is day 1 and I've already finished The Empress of Salt and Fortune earlier today by Nevo. And this is a fantasy novella that follows this character that is tasked to weave together some missing pieces of the rise of this empress called In-Yo. And the way that they are weaving together these missing pieces is through this other character named Rabbit. And Rabbit was a handmaiden of In-Yo, and so she is helping this character piece together these missing parts of history via like verbal stories. And you know, this is a short book, but you know, you still get enough of the story to understand the characters and their motivations, but it definitely leaves you wanting more for sure, because it is 120 pages. Feels like double space, like it's not going to take you long to read it. But of course, this is a series, and the way that it ends, I feel like the series could go in multiple different directions. We could follow multiple characters, or we could just learn more about certain stories that were kind of introduced in this first book. So overall, I'm giving it a 3.75 for now. I mostly enjoyable, definitely, but I did struggle with the writing style a little bit, especially in the beginning. And I will admit that I feel like I was a little distracted reading the book. Just my own thoughts were just taking over, and I had to reread certain parts in the book. So that's why I kind of say for now, I think if I have some more time to reflect on it, my rating may change. It might not, but I will definitely give updated ratings, or, you know, review the ratings of all the books I read at the end of the vlog. So make sure you stick around for that. Every time I get my hair done, you know, my edges be laid, which I love, but my forehead's already pretty big, and so with my edges laid like this, it just like really accentuates the 5 head. But you know, I need a big head to fit all those big thoughts and ideas in there. Anywho, I had completely planned and had every intention to read the entirety of this book while I was sitting in that lady's chair getting my hair braided for 4 hours. But instead, she had turned on the new season of Too Hot to Handle, so that's what I was doing for 4 hours instead of reading. So I got home and I started reading, and I'm about 50 pages in. And I'll just say that this isn't a book for the faint of heart. Okay, if you're not okay or comfortable with like blood, guts, gore, this isn't gonna be your best friend. Okay, this isn't gonna be your cup of tea, sweetie, because within like the first couple pages, we're getting very vivid descriptions of someone getting murdered, essentially, and the mind games that kind of go into that. And I was shocked. I was taken aback. I knew this book was about a serial killer, but wow is what I'm gonna say. Let me talk a little bit about what the book is about. The Least of My Scars by Stephen Graham Jones follows a serial killer. But you know how most serial killers, they're like, oh, I don't want to get caught and that type of thing. So this serial killer, he actually ends up being like contracted / hired by what seems like this mob boss kind of guy, and this mob boss gives him people to kill, so they kind of have this symbiotic relationship. We're following the serial killer as he's obviously killing these people, some of his like inner thoughts, and we're also learning about his past and like some of the past kills that he's had and like how that's led him to where he is now. Like I said, I'm only 50 pages in. I already had to take a break. One, because I needed a mental break, but two, because I'm going to my parents' house for Thanksgiving and not Thanksgiving, Christmas. But I'm leaving tomorrow and I haven't packed. I need to do some laundry, so I took a short break to do that. So it's already 9:45 and I still have about 130 pages left of this book, but I definitely think I'm gonna get it done tonight, and I'm motivated to get it done tonight. I might just have to take a few more breaks, some mental breaks in between. Okay, so this definitely isn't the most flattering angle, but it is day 3. It is almost about 5 o'clock and I still haven't finished The Least of Our Scars by Stephen Graham Jones. I still have about 60 pages of this. I definitely had to take another break yesterday because my stomach was just turning a little bit. But I am on the way to my parents' house, kind of like I mentioned yesterday. And so I think while I'm driving there, I'm going to listen to an audiobook just to make sure that I'm staying on track. And I think I'm going to listen to Even Though I Knew the End. So this audiobook is about 3 to 4 hours, but sped up, I'm guessing it's probably going to be around 2. And this is about a magical detective that lives in Chicago, and she handles an affair of divine monsters, and apparently it's sapphic. So I'm super interested to get into that. Still waiting for that to download before I hit the road. Okay, so we are back in the car again because I just feel like it's always hard for me to find a place to film when I'm at my parents' house. I'm sure in the next couple of days I'll end up in the house at some point, but for right now we are in the car. And let's talk about The Least of Our Scars by Stephen Graham Jones that I finished last night. So this is the most horrifying horror book that I've ever read. And I've said it once and I'll say it again. If you are a faint of heart, get queasy at all very quickly, this book is not for you. And I really mean that wholeheartedly. There are multiple times where my stomach turned, where I thought that I was going crazy, just because we are in the mind of a psychotic serial killer. And so just the way that he's thinking and some of his actions, you're literally like, what the fuck is happening? And you know, I think in a lot of horror, it's not necessarily like fade to black scenes, but there's enough space in the story for you to kind of fill in the blanks a little bit when it comes to some of the details and like some of the like true horror and gore. Not with this book. This book really goes into detail. You just really like can't escape the mind of this serial killer, and you really wish that you could. And I think if you are like a true ride or die horror fan, I say give this a go, because this is really going to test your limits. But because of that, I still really, I want to give trigger warnings, but there are so many trigger warnings for this book. Like just imagine like the worst human being you can think of and the worst serial killer that you can think of, and what they did to people. It's probably going to be talked about in this book. And this is so dark that I'm kind of looking at Stephen Graham Jones a little sideways now, because like what actually has to be going on in your brain to be able to write this? And you know, when I say that, I think about there was a conversation at one point with, if you've seen Game of Thrones and you're familiar with the character Joffrey, that actor did such a good job in that role that you're partially like, can you relate to this character in a way that we just don't understand because you're acting it too well? And that's kind of how I feel about Stephen Graham Jones with this. I'm like, are you okay? Because this is dark. And, you know, so dark to the fact that I was like, I need to look this up, because I need to hear Stephen Graham Jones' point of view when it comes to this. And there is an essay out there where he kind of talks about some of the inspiration for the book, what he was trying to accomplish with the book. And he did note that he would probably never write something like this ever again. But now let's talk about the story itself, right? As I've obviously mentioned, we're following a serial killer, but we're mainly following him as his like normal routine kind of gets interrupted by his latest kill. And so things start to go a little awry, and if it's even possible for him to get more inside his head, he does. And while I am very repulsed by a lot of the things that happen in this book, I'm gonna say it. The ending was actually really good and really well done. And, you know, I would say maybe like halfway through, I wasn't sure if this was just a horror book for horror's sake, or if it was actually going to try to tell a story. And I wasn't really sure like what the ending could possibly be. But the ending actually had me a little confused, but not in like a bad way. I think it really made me kind of like sit with the rest of the story. And I can see kind of why people reread this just because of the ending. And it is really one of those like jaw-dropping endings, and it happens on like the last 2 pages. So you really have to get through the entire story to kind of get the payoff of the ending of it. And so, you know, with that, you're probably thinking, oh, Brea hated this book, right? But a sick part of me wants to give this a high rating almost, just because this type of book, I think it takes a special type of writer to tell a story while also reflecting on like the true horrors of humanity and things that people could actually be capable of. So like I'm still kind of grappling with it, right? Because part of me wants to give it a high rating because it was well done. But part of me wants to give it a 1 star because I never want to read anything like this ever again. So I'm going to sit on this one a little while to try to decide what I want to rate it, but it was a doozy. Let's just say that. Okay, and then my hand is starting to hurt from holding this camera. Now let's talk about Even Though I Knew the End. So this is a fantasy novella that follows a magical detective in the 1930s, and she actually sold her soul to the devil like 10 years ago. And when I first read the synopsis, well, let me say read, because reading is fundamental. I read like the first line of the synopsis. So when I heard magical detective, I was thinking like frou-frou magic. I wasn't thinking demons and angels and the concept of like heaven and hell type of magic, but that's definitely what's happening in this book. And so this detective, like I said, 10 years ago, she sold her soul to save her brother. And now we're following her present day as she kind of strikes up a bargain with someone where she could possibly save her soul, but she has to solve the case of the White City Vampire, which is Chicago's like most notorious serial killer during this time. So we're kind of instantly thrown into this case and like why our protagonist is hired and who hired her, which all turns out to be like interesting enough. But I will say that I think one of the main points of this book was to really focus on the romance, right? And due to some circumstances, I don't think we really get enough of the romance, and we don't really get enough interaction between our main character and her love interest. And I feel like I needed that for not only for the ending to make sense to me, but for me just to be like invested in the characters in general. But you know, it's a short book, so there's also like just some things that you can't really like be that picky about when it comes to like the plot and I guess like the timeline of a romance. I think if you're looking for like a short fantasy and you're not triggered by like the talk of demons and angels and heaven and hell and like some like religious stories, then I think you should go for this one. I personally am giving it 3 stars. However, I would read from this author again because I do feel like she was able to tell like a very coherent and very like engaging story within a short amount of time. I have 2 books left to read, and to be honest, I don't want to read either one of them, and I'm really tempted to go to Barnes and Noble and pick up like a different short book. Even though I brought some others with me, there's just like nothing that's short enough to be included in this vlog and something that I'm like super interested in right now. So I may or may not go to Barnes & Noble. I may also try to go to the library that's here to see if I can find something. But, you know, you'll see momentarily what decision I made.
Why are you going back and forth? I can't keep up with your mood swings. What is trouble in your mind? Are you doing this just to test me? I'm bad at handling this type of
So it's a different day, same location. This time it's not just because I'm trying to escape my family for some privacy. And I say that like I don't love my family, like they're literally some of my best friends, but filming around them is very awkward. But I actually need to finish some Christmas shopping. First, I want to give you guys an update on The House Across the Lake, because that's what I decided to start reading. So The House Across the Lake follows these two teenagers who, for their first date, they decide to go out on this lake. And while they're canoeing, they end up finding a house at the bottom of the lake. And obviously it piques their interest. And I'll say I'm only halfway through it right now, but I'll say that this book really kind of ventures into the unknown. And, you know, the unknown is something that's terrifying to me. So this is giving me like just the right amount of like spooky, scary. And I'll say that Josh Malerman does a good job of building up the suspense. Like the way that this book is written, you're never sure if something tragic or terrifying is about to happen. And so I think that that's done really well. And so hopefully I'll finish that tonight and I can start on something else. But I am currently at Barnes & Noble because I'm going to get my mom a gift card from there. And I'm just so happy because, you know, my mom hasn't been like a huge reader in the past, but this past year she read 7 books. And I was talking to her and she was saying that she like actually enjoyed everything that she read too. And that just like really makes my heart happy that, you know, she's finding a new hobby, especially in retirement, that she's really enjoying. And I'm just even happier that it's reading. And so I'm going to get her a gift card to Barnes & Noble. I would get her like a gift card to like an independent bookstore or something, but just where my parents live, they don't really have any. And Barnes & Noble is really the only place you can get books aside from Amazon. So I'm going to go in there to get her a gift card, but I'm also going to peruse a little bit, see, you know, what tables and stuff they have out, and I will take you guys with me on that.
Well, I don't get it. You say it's a man thing. Babe, I wanna be around. I just wanna make your heart sing. But you're not letting me get through to you. If you let your guard down, baby, this is what I'll do. Come on, baby. Love you, I will love you.
Okay, I'm trying to keep you stable on the bed, so hopefully you don't wobble off. Okay, but the 2 books that I ended up getting from Barnes & Noble was the Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. I've heard a lot of good things about this one, and I think it's something that both me and my mom can enjoy. And then I got Tender is the Flesh, another short book. And I really appreciated that they had like a whole table at Barnes & Noble for like quick reads, things that were, you know, under around 250 pages. Loved that. But let's talk about A House at the Bottom of the Lake by Josh Malerman. So just finished this, and I feel like if books could have a theme song, the theme song for this book would be We Found Love in a Hopeless Place, that Rihanna song. And the ending of this was interesting because I still kind of had questions left at the end, and I was still a little confused at the end, but I wasn't necessarily unsatisfied with the ending. So I definitely recommend this one if you're just looking for like a light horror, or you're just looking for some like light spooky vibes with, you know, some other like contemporary elements thrown in there. And so I'm gonna give this 4 out of 5 stars. And I am currently behind on my challenge. So I'm going to start listening to Before the Coffee Gets Cold. And this is a novel about a small cafe in Tokyo where you can travel through time. Some people are kind of dissuaded from coming to this coffee shop after hearing the legend because there are rules to this time travel. And there's some people who visit the coffee shop and are regulars, but they don't time travel. So this story kind of follows some of those people who end up getting, I wouldn't say persuaded, but I guess they end up wanting to see what the time travel is about, to go back and talk to loved ones, sisters, brothers, things like that. And so this says it's like a feel-good story. I'd imagine there's gonna be a lot about life in general. So I'm excited to listen to this. And it says it's 6 hours and 52 minutes, but at the speed I listen to it, it says it's gonna be about 4 hours, which I can do. So it is almost 11 o'clock right now, so definitely not going to read all of it tonight, but I'm hoping to at least get an hour and a half through it and then finish the rest of it tomorrow. So I will give you guys an update in the morning.
Trouble in your mind, baby, why can't you just tell me? I just wanna be your bride, I wanna give our love wings. You're not letting me.
Okay, so it is day 7 and I finished Before the Coffee Gets Cold last night, but I'm still 2 books behind for this challenge, so I'm definitely going to try to get through 2 books today. But before I talk about what I'm reading next, let's first talk about Before the Coffee Gets Cold. I think I mentioned previously that this was supposed to be like a feel-good book, and those are not the words that I would use. I would say that it's more heartfelt. So in this book, we are following a few different stories of people who want to travel back in time to either like right wrongs with people or just to get some answers. And there are a few rules that people have to follow to be able to do this time traveling. And one of them is you have to have the conversation you need to have before the coffee gets cold. And there are ramifications if you don't. And so this book touches on loss, love, relationships, and just like the realizations that we have about like certain relationships. Well, it might be a little too late to have those realizations, but that's just human nature, and the book kind of talks a lot about that. And some of the stories are a bit sad, which is why I would say it's not a feel-good book, but it does make you kind of reflect on how you interact with people in the present and how you interact in different relationships in your life. But overall, I think this book did what it set out to do, and so I'm giving it a 4.25 stars. Okay, so now on to one of the 2 books that I hope to finish today. And the first one is The Lathe of Heaven by Ursula K. Le Guin. And so this is a sci-fi novel about a man who finds out that he can alter reality through his dreams. And so, he seeks help from a doctor, but then that doctor actually manipulates this man's dreams for his own purposes. And so our main protagonist is trying to figure out like how to navigate that and how to take back that power and use this like dream reality thing in general. So I'm really excited to get into this. I haven't read like a true sci-fi in a minute, and it's only like 180 pages, so definitely should be able to get through it today. And then I'll pop back on once I have something to say, or once I've decided what the second book is that I'm going to try to read today. Okay, so when I talked to you guys last, I was reading The Lathe of Heaven, and I had to DNF it, at least for right now. I got 50 pages into it and I was really struggling, and it took me like 2 hours just to read that 50 pages. I don't know if it's just because I wasn't in the right mindset, or if it was because I just wasn't into the book or how it was written. I don't know, but I decided to pick up Piranesi by Susanna Clark instead. And I'm really glad that I did because I really love this book. And it's kind of hard to explain without giving away some of the magic and wonder of the book, but I'm going to try my best. Okay, so my camera battery died, but as I was saying, Piranesi is about this man who is in this house that kind of acts like a world, and we're kind of met with like this mystery around why he's there and the house itself, and we also have like a lot of unanswered questions. And I would say that usually a lot of unanswered questions would really grind my gears, but the way that it's done in this is absolutely wonderful. But the good thing is all the questions are answered by the end of the book, and the only thing else I'll say about it is, you guys know that clip of Harry Styles when he's talking about "Don't Worry, Darling," and he's like, "It's a movie."
The movie is like, it feels like a movie. It feels like a real, like, you know, go to the theater film movie that, you know, you kind of, the reason why you go to watch something on the big screen.
That's how I feel about this, where it's like, this is a book. But I'm giving it 5 stars. If you guys haven't already read this, I definitely suggest picking it up. Try not to read any spoilers about it or anything like that, because I think it's just best to go into this book not knowing much. Okay, and so because I ended up switching gears and reading Piranesi instead of finishing the Lathe of Heaven, that was the only book that I finished between yesterday and today. So, you know, we finished 6.25 books in 7-ish days, which wasn't exactly my goal, but I'm still proud of myself nonetheless. So let's recap really quick what I rated all the books, because I know I left you guys hanging on some of them. The first book I had read was Empress of Salt and Fortune, which I originally gave a 3.75, and I'm sticking to that rating. Although I did realize that, you know, I think I'd mentioned that at the beginning I wasn't sure of the writing style. I really think that was just me being dumb and realizing that, like, at the beginning of the book we're kind of getting introduced to like the characters and the setting, and so of course I'm not going to know what some of that is because it's like the introduction of the book. But nevertheless, I feel like a 3.75 is still indicative of how I feel about the book, so 3.75, and I think I will continue on in the series for this. And then we have The Least of My Scars by Stephen Graham Jones. And I remember I told you guys I was in between giving a high rating and a low rating, and so I think I'm gonna give this a 4 star, but I want to make it abundantly clear that I don't ever want to read anything like this ever again. Okay, so even though I'm giving a 4 star, doesn't necessarily mean that I enjoyed it, because I don't think the word enjoy is what you would use with a book like this, but I think it was really well done, and the ending just kind of made the rest of the reading experience worth it for me. So giving it a 4 star, don't ever recommend anything like this to me ever again. Thank you so much. And then on audio, I read Even Though I Knew the End, and I ended up giving this 3 stars. Nothing wrong with it, just it felt like it could give a little bit more for me. Again, it's a short book, so I kind of have to give it some leeway there, but 3 stars for Even Though I Knew the End. And then we have A House at the Bottom of a Lake by Josh Malerman, and I gave this 4 stars. Definitely a quick and easy read, but it was still very effective. You got kind of what the author was trying to do. The ending wasn't exactly my favorite, but I feel like it still felt satisfying, and it felt like it was a good ending to the book. It just wasn't like my favorite, so 4 stars. And then also on audio, I read Before the Coffee Gets Cold, and I gave this a 4.25. Very heartfelt. You know, you're gonna not tear up, but you're gonna feel like your emotions jerk around a little bit with this one, but for good reason. You know, I think it talks a lot about like humanity, loss, love, and just like what I think we would all do, and the rules we would follow to maybe have a conversation with someone or go back in time, and just try to, you know, get some questions answered or just spend a couple more minutes with a loved one. So 4.25, definitely recommend that. And then just as a reminder, even though I'm sure you guys don't need it, DNF'd The Lathe of Heaven, at least for right now. I might finish it in the coming days, but it just felt like too much pressure to try to finish it for this vlog. And then, of course, we have Piranesi by Susanna Clark. And one additional thing I'll say about this is that I did read it physically and via audio. And I think if you're someone who enjoys books via audio, you'll like the narrator in this. At least I did. It felt the narrator felt like appropriate for this book, and his accents and things were just really well done. And so that really helped me speed through this book, and I really enjoyed it. So overall, like I said, 6.25 books in 7-ish days. Not mad at it. I still haven't gotten to my Goodreads goal, but I have about a week until the end of the year. And so that gives me a week to read about 4 books, which I'll probably just read leisurely. But you guys will see everything that I've read in the last couple months in my quarterly wrap up. So you'll still get my thoughts and feelings of the 4 books that I read while I'm on vacation these next couple of days. And as always, if you made it to the end of this video, you are my absolute favorite. And let me know down below in the comments, what are like your favorite short books, and what's a book that you've read towards the end of the year that you really enjoyed. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.